What's up, everybody? Welcome back. Thank you for tuning in. This is my third installment here on the Dr. Quack YouTube channel. I've had a lot of requests today. I've asked a lot of people on Facebook, what kind of topics would you like me to talk about? Today, first off, I'm going to talk about pretty much the evolution of professional wrestling. I got a lot of requests for this. People want to know, what's what's your thoughts between the difference between the 80s and today? Well, there's a lot of differences. There really is. The 80s, I was a young kid when wrestling was in the 80s. I was growing up, enjoying it. My grandfather got me into it. He sat me down while the infamous Don the Rock Morocco, Jimmy Superfly Snuka steel cage match was on. And after the match, he looked at me and said, I was going to be a pro wrestler. And I couldn't argue with my grandfather. I mean, it's what he told me, and that's where I studied, and that's what made me get into it. But, there's a lot of differences between there. In the 80s, there were so many. Let's see. There was a lot of bigger guys back then. There was a lot of, in size. There was guys that were 6'5" and above. There were guys that were built, and not necessarily muscular built, but they were big guys. And you had guys like Bundy out there, and Haystacks Calhoun, of course, in the 70s and the 60s and all that. But you had a lot of bigger guys. You had John Studd, Andre the Giant, Hulk Hogan, even guys like the Junkyard Dog, who's decent size. You had several of those guys. And then you had some of the talented wrestlers in the business. You had guys like Ricky Steamboat and Rick Rude and Jake Roberts who could really manipulate the crowd. Manipulate is not really the word, but they knew how to do psychology really well. They know how to make you stay focused into a match. These guys were really your breadwinners. Those guys there made you focus in on their match. Though you may not have came just for that match. You might have came to see Hogan. You might have came to see Andre. And those were, of course, the big draws. But you see a lot more back then. You seen, jobbers matches. There was a such thing as jobbers, out there. Guys that were called nobodies. You had, of course, your Brooklyn Brawlers, your Barry Horowitz. And you had guys like that. The guys that made, talent look good. That was their job. Wasn't out to win, wasn't out to get pushed, none of that. It was out to, basically make everybody else look good. That was their job. You go over to the NWA side, of course, you got Flair and you got Sting, you had Sid Vicious over there. You had a bunch of big guys, guys that were tall. Barry Windham, comes to mind. Big, strong guys, A lot of things back in the 80s, you had managers. It seemed like every bad guy in the history, there you go, heel, and as we call it, but, every heel had a manager. You had somebody talk to them. You had Jimmy Hart. You had Bobby the Brain Heenan, Jim Cornette, Mr. Fuji, and others. You had a lot of people, Gary Hart. You had a lot of these guys that were out there that had their stables, If you remember back in the 80s, back when Macho Man was deciding who his manager was, he had like 4 or 5 managers bidding on him. Of course, he picked Elizabeth, which was a great choice. It helped his career because, he was able to work with her and make his character just shine. You've seen a lot of that. People took a lot more character risks, I heard that from Kurt Angle last night, and that kind of made sense to me, because a lot of people took a lot more chances on drawing heat and making the crowd upset, and doing, things to keep them into the show. And you look versus, 80s, let's just say 80s, 90s versus today. Big difference. Today, everything is so PC. They're trying to break away from it. I understand we can't go back to the Attitude Era because there was a line and sometimes they crossed it. But you look at today really, you have a lot of guys that are spot fest guys. You see that everywhere. There was more psychology back then. There wasn't 50 super kicks in a match. If you got hit with a super kick in the 80s, that was considered a finisher. Chris Adams, Shawn Michaels, You know, a bunch of guys you could throw in that, you know, with the super kick. But when you got hit with those, it was done. You know, the sad thing is wrestling today is not, you know, as believable. There's no, you know, believability in this business anymore. The cat's out of the bag. Everybody knows it's fake, even though they knew it back then. But there was realism there. Like if someone got hit with a roll of quarters and they were out for a month, you thought they really got hurt. There was a chance. You know, now today you see people get hit with chairs, you know, and you would see, you know, like Foley and Edge going through the table through fire. You see these guys then the next week, they're fine. You know, there's no believability there. That's a big problem with today. I mean, today you got a lot of smaller guys as well. You got a lot of guys that are in the 200-pound range to 220 playing heavyweight champion. You know, you didn't have that back then. I mean, you think about it, the 80s. Your smallest guy might have been Flair as world champion. He wasn't small. And he knew how to work the crowd, so it worked well. But you had guys like Hogan, Slaughter, The Warrior. You know, you had those guys. The Rock. You know, Steve Austin was built pretty well. The crazy thing is today, I mean, and this is not a knock on talent today. Trust me, I understand it's a different world. It's not pro wrestling anymore. It is sports entertainment. Okay? Sports entertainment. There's a big difference because today it is more flash in the pan. Today you have guys like Finn Balor, who's talented in the ring, but should not be fighting for a world championship according to 80 standards. He's what, 190 pounds? I'm bigger than he is. You know, can he work? Yes. Is he a high flyer? Yes. But should he be fighting for a world championship? Probably not. I mean, I don't understand it. Jericho, when he won the title, was just about the bare minimum of a heavyweight you wanted for a championship. You know, and he had charisma. He could work the crowd. He knew how to work the mic. That's what made that make sense. You know, there's just a lot of guys today that, you know, I understand the E manipulates in the back. They pretty much say, here, you only got 7 minutes. You each got to work about 5 moves, and that's about it. And that's a lot of the show, unless it's a big show like WrestleMania this weekend. Then you're going to see a little bit more. But if it's a Raw, a SmackDown, a house show, you know, that was different too. There was a lot more house shows back in the 80s. There was a lot more. They traveled all over. They only had 4 pay-per-views versus 12, you know. A lot of big differences in the world of professional wrestling. Do I like where it's going today? Some yes, some no. I mean, I personally don't really watch Raw or SmackDown much. I read a lot of it on Facebook because there are a lot of people that just bitch about wrestling. Oh my God, I've never seen this. Back then, you had a lot of people that didn't bitch, you know, or you couldn't find it publicly. They might have bitched among their circles. You know, the debate who was the best. But now you get mad because Roman Reigns is getting a push or somebody else is getting a push. And it ain't your guy that's getting a push. That's the big differences in professional wrestling. I don't have an answer to fix it. And that's basically my story right there. And like I said, guys, I'm getting ready to come up with some more videos here today. I'm going to do a couple more on some different topics. If you have any suggestions, please write them in the comment box. Subscribe. You know, follow me on Facebook if you do. But thank you for tuning in, and you guys have a wonderful day, and I'll probably be back here in an hour.